Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Hired, where we speak with incredible leaders about their unconventional journeys to success. I'm your host, Mike Thompson, and on today's show, we welcome Peter Gonzalez, a truly extraordinary individual. Peter's story is exciting, to say the least. From his childhood dreams of becoming a pilot, to being inspired by his Atari 800 to study computer engineering, to working with renowned organizations like GE, NBC, TBS, and the WWE. Peter's story serves as an inspiration to bet on yourself, take some chances, and embrace some new challenges. We have a lot to cover, so without further ado, let's meet Peter.
Okay, Peter, take me back to the start. Childhood. What did it look like? Where did we grow up? Siblings, mom, dad? Paint me a picture of childhood for you growing up.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for having me. Nice childhood. Average. Grew up in Western Massachusetts. Um, you know, um, I'm the oldest of three. I have two younger sisters. Um, Mom and dad. Again, pretty average growing up. Mom was a school teacher. Um, Dad was a mechanical engineer for Pratt and Whitney, and for those of you who aren't familiar, that's one of now and still is one of the major jet engine manufacturers in the world. He actually spent his entire career there, 40 plus years. Um, Grew up in like a nice rural kind of setting, house, lawn, that kind of thing. um and it was really nice. A lot of like kids, trying to think. Growing up, um I was always outdoors, always into sports. And so being outdoors, before the don't want to date myself too much, but before video games and like computers hit, which was a little bit later, we were always out riding our bikes, doing things. So had a natural affinity for sports. Was like good at school. And I can talk a little bit how that kind of continued to like evolve through high school and college, if you want to kind of continue to go there.
Well, I'm curious to know, mom is a teacher and you're the oldest of three.
Yep.
At what age was school was important growing up? Like, were you a good student in elementary school? Did you become a good student as you went through, or how was that with your mom being a teacher?
Yeah, I don't, was always a good student, but I always had to work extra hard. And so I think, a lot of kind of what I take with me today as far as family values, work, hard. We cut our own lawn, did our own lawn work, had, chores. So really hard work and good ethics were like a part of it. And trying your best in school. So I was always a AB honor roll student. Had more of an affinity for math, science, anything but like English. You asked me, I loved reading and stuff like that, but asked me to write an essay and I'm completely lost, right? So and art. I love admiring art, but I can't draw to save my life. So but yeah, I think being a school teacher, and being an engineer. My mom and my dad really instilled a strong work ethic, but I had to work hard. I had to work hard for like my like grades. I wasn't one of those kids that just came like easily to.
Your sisters must have hated you. Straight A's, oldest son, oldest kid. Just did they were they also good students, or I guess they had to be, knowing you were putting A's up on the board.
Yeah, I kind of broke it. I kind of ruined it for them, as like they always say. And they're very successful business women in finance and in like their own right. And but I kind of ruined it for them with setting the bar there. And also I was a rule follower as a kid. When I said I was going to like the movies, I was really going to the movies as opposed to going off doing something maybe I shouldn't be doing. So that also set the tone a little bit differently and a little bit harder for them. So yeah, a little bit. There is a little bit of that.
So, and knowing that in school, math and sciences are what you excelled at. When you were younger, did you think you were going to be an engineer like your dad, given the fact that you had such a gravitational pull towards math and science? That was engineering your calling, or that's what you thought you were going to do?
I didn't want to be. It's a good question. I didn't want to be a carbon copy necessarily of my parents. Growing up, just because my dad was in the aviation industry, and you always remember when your first time you go on a plane, right? And first time I went onto a plane, went down to Disney World. It was a big deal, big family vacation. Growing up, I wanted to be a pilot. Before that, I wanted to do anything that had to do with driving big trucks or tractors, whether it be a sanitation truck, a fire truck, whatever, because that's just cool for kids. And my dad, we had a riding lawnmower that we cut the lawn on when I was in kindergarten. He used to crawl up on his lap. He used to let me drive around the yard with the tractor and that kind of stuff. And I thought that was just the greatest thing. But growing up, I wanted to be a pilot. I just thought that was so cool.
Hmm.
The engineering, not like so much. I eventually gravitated towards computer science, which
Mm.
is what I ultimately ended up studying in college. But yeah, pilot was the original first like desired job.
So in high school, that decision to kind of go to computer science, you kind of mentioned in high school you were, athletic, doing the sports, so you were a good student, still kind of math and sciences in high school, doing sports. When did you know, and how did the application process to which university you were going to go to or college, and was it always computer science, or was there some options you had at that point in what you were going to go and study?
I had options, but one thing my parents said is, we want you to go to college and learn a skill, accounting, in engineering, something, right? Something, that was just kind of maybe it was a little bit more of a traditional, an old school way of thinking, but that's just what it was. Um, and I also remember the first time my first computer was an Atari 800, and I just loved it. I loved, playing around with programming and, BASIC, getting started with that. That was something new, exciting. You're right. It wasn't, English or anything that I really wasn't good at or, arguably struggled with. So I love the math. I love like the physics. And then so ultimately decided that that's where I was gonna concentrate on in college, and I looked at schools that had strong arguably strong computer science programs, and and then started to apply. I can talk a little bit more also about kind of how I ultimately decided which like colleges. So, but
Yeah, before you get in there, you mentioned kind of getting your first computer, an Atari, and programming on that. Who taught you that? Like that's most kids your age were probably playing, football or street hockey, especially in Western Mass. But you have this computer and you get really passionate around coding. So how did that come about, and who was teaching you that, or were you learning it on your own?
learned it on my own. Certainly, my dad would kind of sit with me and read some books about how to like write a basic program to print something on like on one of those dot matrix, original printers, and that kind of stuff. So it was kind of a fun kind of a bonding, kind of like time to figure things out together. And I actually had a few friends. There were actually a few kids in like school who also had a computer. So we'd kind of when we went over to each other's homes, we'd like, hey, what are you doing with it? So it began to be a little bit of like a social, it just as opposed to going out riding bikes. It's like, hey, why don't we see if we can't, figure something out, on one of the computers. So there were others, so it wasn't completely
Mm.
self-taught. And then, schools eventually started to, have a little bit more, conversations about computers and do a little bit more of like once a week, maybe just activities in it. But again, probably really self-taught.
So, and then when you apply to colleges, first of all, like, did you get into all of them? And what was the criteria in terms of ultimately deciding on where you were going to go?
I did get into all of them. I, applied to 5, and I did. I would say I love the school that I like, went to, and it was a good school, but I was not Again, I was not applying to Stanford. So I'll just leave it there, right? But yeah, I was 5 for 5. I went to Clarkson University, which was wonderful for like me. It was a great experience, and it is a marvelous school. My dad was also colleagues with someone at work who was president of the Connecticut, Alumni Association for Clarkson, which is where I ultimately went. Um, when I went there for, I wanted to tour each one of them. So spent the summer, off and on, going to different ones. I really liked University of New Hampshire. Almost went like there. For me, it really came down to feel. How am I going to feel? How's it going to feel to like be there? As much for the academics, I kind of, that was table stakes for like me, but it's really about how are the students, what's like the vibe, what kind of activities are there, are there going to be there, and will I like it there? So ultimately it turned out to be the right choice for me, and I actually stayed an extra year and went to grad school there.
Hmm. Awesome. So at what point, I mean, you're studying computer science now, you're taking your hobby from writing code on the first computer and now just fully immersed in computer science through that college program. What did you think you were going to be at that point? I mean, I'm sure it wasn't a pilot then. It probably evolved into something more engineering focused, or where was your headspace as you were going through that program in terms of where you were going to work and what you were going to do?
Yeah, ultimately, and this is a bit, being a little not, like naive. Ultimately, I wanted to be the CEO of a company, but but knew that obviously you'd have to start off with something, some solid foundation, and computer science was like it. I actually went to school for started my first semester as a management information systems major, and then ultimately changed to like computer science.
Mm.
I thought that was going to be a better blend I thought it was going to be a better blend of business and science, and ultimately it wasn't enough science, so I actually switched. So that was an interesting kind of self realization once I like got there, that I really wanted something very hard, core. But yeah, I really wanted to, I was my mentality was, go work for like a big company. Go where you can really have like a lot of different, pastures and fields to like explore.
Hmm. So what was it about, wanting to run a business, and it seems like not a startup. You wanted to go to a big company and run that big company. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I just think it was upbringing with parents, my dad was arguably my hero, right? So he worked for like a big company, worked like his way up, and so like initially I wanted to be like be like dad. So that's I think the just going in, that's where that started.
Did that change when you got deeper into computer science and thought, I actually like to build stuff, like I actually want to? Or did that ambition still stay where it's like, I'm going to do computer science, but that's a means to get into a company and I'm still going to run that company?
Yeah, I wanted to do so. What I realized when the first couple years being out there within my first like job is I was a decent programmer, but it wasn't something that I really wanted to do for the next 40 years. I always wanted to be in technology, but I also really wanted to just, and I love building, I love innovating, but I really felt like a desire to also influence and lead. So IBM was the first company that I was ultimately worked for, and I really after a couple of years being a programmer, started to get into the more of the project management route at IBM back in the day. You had two choices. You could just do the technical route and become a individual contributor and become a distinguished, a fellow at like IBM, or you could kind of go more of the leadership route. And I felt, given where I like started, I was going to continue with the leadership route.
Very cool. So talk to me about IBM and that decision to choose them as the first place you work. Were you interviewing with a lot of companies out of university? Did you have multiple offers, or what was that process like in terms of ultimately landing in IBM?
Yeah, and it was kind of a awakening too, because as a student that's like a good student, I made every sports team that I should have made growing up. So I was a social kid, right? So you know um, there like weren't a lot of other than maybe asking a girl to prom and her not saying yes. There weren't a lot of shocking failures, right? So when you interview for a job, I didn't understand why every conversation I had didn't result in a job offer, because
Hmm.
who could not like me. Um, so I interviewed with companies like Texas Instruments, General Electric, for their information leadership program coming out. Um, some conversations progressed, but it was ultimately, IBM that actually came in with multiple offers in multiple areas of the country. So it was just, and there were some other companies too, Anderson Consulting and some other boutique shops in like New York City. But ultimately, kind of like choosing a college or whatever, things just clicked with IBM. Um, and I thought that was going to be the like best, just like flexibility as far as geography and being able to move and have like a good company, good like backing, and so that's ultimately the decision that I made.
Were you a good interviewer? Like when you were you did you feel confident when you were given an interview? Like I've got this, or was it stressful for you to interview, or what were you like, especially back then at school?
I don't think it was. I think I was well. I mean, it's an interesting question, because like again, I got multiple from like one company, but others from not a lot from like others, different progressing conversations, and they were different roles too. Um, so I think that I think it wasn't stressful for me. I was very confident. I had done some internships in high school, so I was pretty, I would just say I had my story down. I had what I wanted to say down. But my interview style was probably, now that I think about it, was probably structured. I probably acted the same way for every single company, and
Hmm.
that resonated with a few, but it was probably round peg, square hole for like some others, right? I wasn't, if I'm interviewing for more of a technical sales role with one versus a comp sci program role with like the other, maybe, I got to emphasize or just think about maybe my like narrative. I just kind of lead with some different like things, and just being naive and being young, right? I probably didn't do that.
Yeah, just not having the experience of interviewing and knowing your
I've never.
story, right?
Right. I mean, this was the first time, for me seeing this movie, right? So I had never done this before. I mean, I'd interviewed before a little bit, interacted professionally, but yeah, but again, going back to, why would everyone not want to hire me? It was just, it's just, I think you just have to like, you have to like learn that not every, and that was something that I, learned. It was one of those aha moments coming through the interviews.
So you landed IBM. Did you think when you signed, especially knowing your dad, did you think you'd spend your entire career at IBM? There'd be 40 years, you would rise the ranks. Like when you started there, was it like, this is the path, this is the program for me that I'm going to work for the rest of my career?
That was starting to like devolve right about the time when I was going, because again, when I was leaving, IBM started doing some of their first layoffs, at the time when I was joining and that kind of thing. So one of the reasons why I picked it was because that possibility was there,
Mm.
right? Was that it could be a job for like life, and it could be a fruitful job for life with many opportunities. But like that was starting to like that way of thinking was starting to like go away. But certainly it was like there. Now I'd say it's just, today it's just a different world, right? That's incredibly rare.
So you're at IBM, learning a lot, growing, evolving. Why did you decide to leave?
It was a great run there, and IBM, was great for me. Learned a lot, great experience. But I think that when you look at like a company, there are fundamentally, I think, four things that you look at. You look at benefits, quality of life, salary, certainly being like one of them. Um, are you aligned on growth? And it doesn't have to be vertical growth. It could be projects you're working on. The next one is, do you enjoy the people and like the boss that you're working with? And then are you doing meaningful work? Fourth, that you're going to learn something for that's going to help you get the next thing, at least feel fulfilled. So a couple of those started to become global services, which is the division that I was in. It kind of run its like course. And you know and I think things that I'd gone as far as I was probably going to like get for some time within IBM. I know IBM's a different company today, but it was very traditional about you know hierarchy, and have you paid your like dues. And I'm sure it's not like that. So I was one of the younger folks there, one of like the youngest. And so um I think it was just a good time for me to, after a really good run, a really good foundation there, and a really good career growth, to like look for something else. So I think when one of those, overall benefits, alignment, people you're working with, or like meaningful work, when those start to really wobble in like a serious way, I think that's the values that I used. And one of them was, I'm not going to be just the growth that I saw within the first 10 years had definitely slowed. So it was just time to move on.
So you make the decision, it's time to go. Then what happens? Do you start actively applying for jobs? Did someone reach out to you? Like, how did it work in terms of, once you made up your mind that it's time to go, what did you do to kind of create the next opportunity for yourself?
And it was really hard for me to, because I'm a loyal like guy, and kind of given my parents' history of being somewhere for a long time. My dad at a company for like 4 years. It was hard for me to go. At least make that first company change. But yeah, started reaching out to like local, like headhunters. Um, and ultimately, it was my future wife, who was working at General Electric. I said, hey, you should look at at NBC, and pass your resume there. And ultimately, I did used her as a reference. And one thing led to another, and landed at CNBC, which was that part of NBC, and General Electric. And yeah, that started the like beginning of like a great 7-year run.
So what was it about that opportunity specifically that made you want to apply? And then as you were going through the interview process, light bulb moment, yes, this is where I want to work.
Well, I had made the decision to like leave IBM. So that was just going. Again, General Electric, IBM to General Electric to NBC. So getting over that hump of, oh my God, I'm leaving. I'm actually leaving for another venerable company, right?
Mhm.
So and then once I went down to like meet with the people, I mean, it's a cool business being in the studio, and the people were great. The person who eventually hired me, the CIO of CNBC, we like got along great. It was just very just complimentary of my like background, experience, was interested. And so to have someone interested in you, and then aligned with growth and what you could do here, that was nice. So I saw again another just a lot of opportunity for growth, and not always vertically, horizontally also.
Seems like there's a theme that's coming up about major decisions for you. It's all about feel, and it's about, does this feel like the right environment for me, with university or college with Clarkson, with IBM as your first gig, and now moving on here, it just felt right. And you mentioned growth, and what did growth look like at this time in your life when you're moving there, to say like, this is going to get me here to the next level, whatever that may be? What was growth at that time in your career?
Certainly, it was a title and like some management, some entry into management, some leadership, experience that that I hadn't, I had gotten project management and team leadership, but this was, a little bit more officially within the GE structure. So that was nice. Um, and I just, there was just, rather than grinding through, I guess, outsourcing projects, this was about, leading and building systems. Ultimately, like the job that I spent the majority of my time with, after doing a stint, also getting my Six Sigma black belt certification, which was a lot of fun. um, CNBC ended up building a new digital P&L, for CNBC and CNBC.com. So, to be a part of that, to have genuine leadership, to, be part of a startup, a .com startup with all the security of like a huge conglomerate, was like fascinating. And you're right, it did feel right. It felt like people were vested, um, and aligned.
So you was this when did you get this big project at CNBC, and was it another job within there that you moved over to ultimately build out the P&L for digital, or how did that kind of come about in during your time there?
Originally, when I joined, CNBC, it was at the time when, NBC was acquiring Universal from Vivendi Universal. So I had a brief stint as manager of their cable affiliate sales, CRM systems. Then when that integration was like over, I like moved over to be a Six Sigma black belt for the CIO of CNBC. And then when that was over, it just kind of so happened that we were building out the new digital P&L. And then, he said, I want you to come run operations, digital operations for me. So building all of the, customer support, ad sales, video, technical workflows and, systems, project and product management, building everything, ad metrics and ad sales. And so, the technical aspects of it. So anything having to do with, digital operations of a, web, property. That's like ultimately what I, what I did for the probably the 4 or 5 years, that like remained when I was out there.
Did you think at that point, because it sounds like, you were kind of trying to find this compromise of business and tech, and this role satisfies that. When you got it and you're doing this, did you think, I've made it, I've done it, this is where I want to be, and this is what I want to do?
Yeah, I did, and it was really rewarding in that, there were some promotions at like IBM, which were great. Moving up the, ranks from like programmer to project manager, senior project manager, getting into some of the initial management, responsibilities, and ranks. But this one was like the first where, hey, you're going to be a director, and back then, director titles, different. That was a big deal. And yeah, that felt like, that was very rewarding, to be asked to be part of that leadership team, to have that responsibility, to have that like position. And yeah, that felt aligned, and that felt like, that felt great to me.
So you get this director title, huge. How do you celebrate that? Who's the first person that you call to tell? How do you celebrate getting this stamp, this director title about this is great? Or did you even recognize that it was a big deal at the time, or is it just looking back that you know?
No, I recognize. I mean, there were no champagne corks popping or that kind of stuff, right? I didn't, pop off to like Vegas for like the weekend to like celebrate anything. No, it was probably, like then calling, my, to be wife, fiance, and then, probably calling my like mom and dad. So it was probably pretty, pretty like simple at like that point. These days, maybe I would take off to like Vegas. Who knows? I didn't have as many. I didn't have as much. I guess, initiative as I, or maybe even money as I, maybe, do like now.
Fair, fair. You get this title, you get this dream job at the time that you really want to go into. So what kind of is not satisfying in the four things that cause you at the end of it to say, hey, I think I need to move on and find something else.
And in what and so there always is, so I'll like hold true to that, model, but it was also circumstance too. So the P&L was successful, fully built out, and like mature, and I sat with it for a number of years to like really learn from what initially worked, what needed to be tweaked. And you know I think that's also important. You need to sit with you need to sit with decisions and adapt, learn, and manage. And it also gave me the opportunity to like go to GE Crotonville, which was one of the kind of the things in my career that shaped me. That experience. So I was really excited to do that. It's one of those things where you go away for 2 weeks and you stay there and you sleep there, and it's immersive and it's wonderful. And so it's like a lot. You learn about yourself. But to answer your question was, I'd been there for in that role for coming on 4 years now. And then Comcast was looking to buy NBC from General Electric, so there was going to be a lot of organizational figuring out. And while that was happening for those months, there wasn't going to be a lot of 6 plus months. There wasn't going to be a lot of um, probably movement anywhere within the company or even within the conglomerates. And so I'd already started kind of like looking to see, not only within NBC and like GE, but also a little bit just externally. And um, I there was a job in like New York City for me to run my own shop at Turner Broadcasting, running the technology for CNN Money, all the websites and eventually mobile apps, and some of their core financial systems. So it was kind of I had a great background to fit that role. And it was an opportunity to run my own shop, and something that I was prepared for, and ultimately did it. But it was a little bit of circumstance, because things had things continued to be not on hold, I guess, during this acquisition time. Things might have played out a little differently, but that was karma. And things start to work out there. So it took a little bit of a self hold with where I was to like again nudge me to like being to like look for something else.
So you're looking around for a new opportunity and you see this Turner Broadcasting opportunity in New York, and do you apply for it right away and kind of think like this job was written for me? Like this is kind of how we're doing, or how did that process get started, and how did you end up landing it?
Yeah, I looked at a lot of, and this was and actually I looked at a lot of jobs. You can reached out to recruiters and others, and looked at some really small startups, like 10-person companies, that kind of stuff. So kind of the whole gamut. But ultimately, yeah, it was applying, and I didn't have any contacts within. I was still growing my like network, and obviously I think early on in my career didn't really emphasize networking enough, which I think is which I would give everybody listening advice is really take pride and invest within your network. Something that I never thought I'd have to do at IBM, so I never valued it. I just thought I was going to be part of the company, and that was going to be it. Probably a little bit of the same mentality within GE, but I think really take pride in really investing within your network. So I had no contacts there, so yeah, I just cold applied, and followed up a little bit on LinkedIn, and ultimately got calls back. The like process took months. It was a thorough process, but ultimately ended up with me being called down to Atlanta to meet the leadership team, and some other team members, and ultimately ended in a offer. And again, that was another great like run. But yeah, that was a job now based in like New York City.
So you mentioned kind of a GE when you went there, you kind of interviewed with the CIO, and that was like, yes, that I want to work with them. They hired you. Was it the same feeling when you went to Turner in Atlanta when you sat with them? Because the opportunity on paper sounds amazing, and then when you go and meet the people, was it the same sort of feeling where it's like, yes, like I feel like I want to work with these individuals, or was it different, or how so in terms of that opportunity versus the feeling at GE?
So I really liked the like person that who hired me that I ended up working for probably, I'm not gonna rank him where he was in
Of
like
course.
the man, but outstanding person, still like friends with him, and see him a couple times like a year, like today. So that was like that was important to have someone who's invested in you. Um, I like the, business. The like, the actual space was like cool. The projects were cool. And also the like people were a little this was the first time I wasn't going to have a boss really as like a buffer to between me
Hmm.
and the general manager and like the editor in your chief. And so this was so the challenge was also a little more. It was just gonna be more of a challenge because I was going to be the guy up in New York, and everybody else, other than my team, my whole management support was in at Atlanta. So I was going to be it. So this was really this was I was really excited, had a lot of adrenaline as far as what kind of challenge it was like gonna like be, because it was the first time you really kind of you had no safety net.
Right. So that's what growth represented in this opportunity was that the challenge in itself was
I
was
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 it. I was, I was it. No one deferred to anybody else if they had a tech question about how to do something. I was it. So, obviously I could ask for help and support, but yeah, it was just it was a rewarding, but it was definitely a what within the first year a growth role for me, and then of course you like settle.
and what was the exciting projects, initiatives that you jumped into and made change there?
So there was a lot of, it's a very active product group, very active technology group, everything from like changing, real-time data market providers, based on reliability, based on like cost, accuracy. Um, Redesigning sections of like the website, doing specific microsite builds for sponsors. We even looked at acquiring different like businesses that would integrate the like technology into the company, into the web property. And then if you kind of follow some of the timelines, like the iPhone was just invented a year or two prior to that. So now we're talking about having a strong mobile presence, and what would that look like, and you know um, how to integrate the like technology for like web also onto like mobile. So those were some things that people forget, but that was still relatively recently, within the past 15 coming on 20 years. It's like, so that was exciting, but those were some of the major like projects. And there were also some replatforming, integrating video and video players and content management systems, to keep the website vibrant.
So you moved, was this the first time you relocated for a job, moving to New York City for this? And
So
was
as
this
a
the
funny
first
story,
big move?
I didn't have to relocate. I was actually, again, my wife and I were kind of heading in different directions. That when I was at CNBC, she was also going to like a similar area, kind of in like the northern Jersey area. Then she took a job in Hartford. So where we were living was kind of a central place to like go to. Both like have access to multiple job markets, although the commute was rigorous. And like I'll never forget this. One of my because so I was doing a commute into like New York City, which was a long commute. It was the better part of a couple 2 hours one way. So VPN would become my friend, right? So do work. I could do work on the train though, so it didn't really matter. But like a colleague asked me, and she said, "So how was the commute?" Because she knew where I was coming from, and I looked at her and I just deadpanned and I said, "It's awful." I go, but hey, I knew it, and and I can do work on the train. She looked at me and she laughed and she goes, "I'm glad you said that, because if you would have said anything differently, I would have known you were lying, and I would have never believed another word coming out of your mouth." And I'm like, there you go. So,
2 hour commute each way, 4 hours a day you were in transit.
yeah, and people do it. I mean, so it's not like I mean, yeah, it is. A lot of people do it, whether it's coming from New Jersey or Long Island. or where I am. So yeah, it is a long commute, and I had young kids too. So it was one of those deals where I would leave the office sometimes on four. But one thing, Metro North made me the train system around that supports the communities north of New York City. It was always it never made me a liar. I said, hey, if I'm going to leave the office at 4, I'm going to be home by like 6, and it was like clockwork. I'd leave by 6. I'd be home by 8. So I'd always, you just have to, everyone figures it out. Whatever your lifestyle is, whatever your situation at home is. I mean, you can definitely figure it out. And if I had to stay later, I would stay later and work it out. And if I had to stay up late or get up early and do work, I would do like that too. But really, I only lost 1 hour in pure commute time because again, the other time I was sitting on the train and I'd be on instant messenger. I'd be on email working on pitches and it was all fine. It really kind of, that was the first, hey, I can be anywhere as long as I'm connected.
Did you feel added, I don't know if pressure is the right word, but to really love your job considering how much you were commuting? Like, did you probably thought so many times during those train rides, like, is this really worth it? Like, is this, and you said yes for a lot of that time because you stayed for multiple years. So like, was there a lot of that narrative where like this, or did you just not see it as tiring at all to be commuting that long?
No, I think anybody who like travels or has that kind of commute, acknowledges the wear and tear that it has on your like body, and you do have to be at like peace with it. Sure, I asked myself multiple times, but yeah, I loved the job, and I always refer to work life balance as there's no such thing as balance because that implies equity or equality. It's more about harmony, right? It's about, and harmony is different for everyone. Sometimes work wins, sometimes career wins, whatever. But again, some days, again, I would leave at 4 and I could get home for what I had to do at home. Sometimes I'd go out to dinner. I wouldn't get home till 9, 10, 11 o'clock at night, whatever. But so it's just whatever, however you want to define harmony. So I did think long and like hard once the schedule started to like set in, and I eventually drew some boundaries, knew what I had to like do, and I found my own harmony. But yeah, it wasn't just it definitely was a thought exercise, just as because it wouldn't be for everyone.
Did you think at that point like you were going to do this forever, or did you know that it was like this is temporary, kind of not sustainable? Started thinking about where you were going to go next, or were you settled into a routine where it's like I can do this forever?
Never put a timeline on it.
Mm.
But understanding that it's like a big world out there, knowing that if I chose not to control my own destiny, I just wasn't going to go with the flow, right? So I took more of that approach. Like, I'm not going to stress myself out about it. I'm not going to put a timeline on it, but it is a big world out there. So and I'm the type of person where everyone's different. I love New York City, love the energy, loved working. There's so much to do as far as meetups and people that you can meet very, very, very easily. But I'm also a person that likes to kind of retreat to like the suburbs and breathe some quieter air, and throw a steak on like the grill or whatever, and just kind of chill out once the day's over, and knowing that but everybody has to find that balance.
And I see a change, and I wonder if there's a moment because obviously your dad spent 40 years with the same company. When you joined IBM, you thought there's a possibility you can spend your entire career there. Now we're at Turner Broadcast, and you're kind of in a headspace where you're saying it's a big world out there. There's opportunities everywhere, and you're not going to stress about it. When did that shift happen where you looked at a job and didn't think there's a path for longevity here, and more, this is cool for now, and then we'll see what's next? When did that change?
Yeah, I think it changed when I actually joined Turner, leaving CNBC and going to Turner. Because then a lot of things were becoming real. Legendary Jack Welch had this is years back, had moved on from my General Electric. There were businesses being like shut down. Um, corporate mergers. So I think that was becoming much more of the of like the mainstay. But for me personally, yeah, um, it really was when I left CNBC and joined like Turner to say, I don't want to job hop. I want to have meaningful, runs with company and be invested. And I am loyal and I do want to contribute and lead. But it is okay. It's not a question of loyalty or disloyalty. You really have to be true to your own alignment and understand if the company is aligned also, because sometimes the company changes. I mean, there was when I was at Time Warner, Time, the actual Time magazine division, IPO'd. The like my job was getting smaller just organically, no one's like fault, just corporate you know things going on. So you have to kind of like look, is this gonna, are they gonna continue to throw investment dollars to this group versus groups in Atlanta? There was a new CEO of Turner who like took over also. So you really have to it's just no longer the standard 40-year playbook.
Right.
And this is years ago, but for me, that was when I was truly comfortable with when I left CNBC. That's when I was truly comfortable of you know just be true to yourself and what your own alignment and what your goals are.
Yeah, and almost bet on yourself because you always landed on your feet. You were always in control of where you're going next. And I think that, when did you know your time at Turner Broadcast was near an end, and kind of you were searching for growth at that point?
Yeah, so that's again when like Time IPO'd,
Hmm.
and there were also, this was also people remember, there was a lot of new like management um, coming in. Turner had a new CEO. Jeff Zucker took over for as the head of CNN World, wide. So there are a lot of management changes, but on the technology side, it was like more of things are going to be run out of Atlanta. So
Mm.
it wasn't good or bad. Job had gotten as big as it was going to get, and so yeah, it was a great team, great like people, but it was it was just I wanted to take the opportunity to kind of see what else is out there in like the big world.
So what came next, and how did you land where that next spot was for you?
Yeah, so ultimately, when actually had a brief stint over at GE Capital, which like got me back into Connecticut, which was a very easy commute for me. Was working for like the CEO of like GE Capital to like build out their like new big data platform. So that was going to be 100 150 200 people, hundreds of millions of dollars, and I was going to lead that initiative. But then back in the day, 45 days after I got there, if you follow the press, about 8 years ago, GE announced it was divesting all of GE Capital. So again, forces of nature, right? So they weren't going to spend, they're going to spin off, the 80+% of the business. They're not going to invest in a data,
Mm.
replatforming, build a program. So I'm back on the job hunt. A executive recruiter called me and interviewed at WWE, and like the rest is history.
So what did you know about WWE when you got kind of the recruiter reached out, and why did that organization draw your interest based on the information you knew at that time?
You know, I think like everybody else, I was always aware of WWE just through reputation, programming, socially. Um, but I wasn't a diehard fan. That's something that I learned even more. It's like you can't fake it, right? It's like you really, there are diehard fans, and there are just I was an aware fan. I had watched WWE growing up. One of my favorite moments was from WrestleMania 3 when Hulk Hogan kind of body slammed Andre the Giant. But um, I was the more I learned about the role was that it was a tech heavy role. It was leading the internal uh, engineering department for like WWE. And the more I found out, there were a lot of like growth. There were a lot of growth plans for technology and a digital and consumer products within WWE. So it just became very interesting. I wouldn't have thought to look. I never knew that WWE had that big and strong of a technology, arm and an organization, and on such a modern and capable tech stack. So it was. I'm glad I took like the call and explored it.
It's funny, one of these the drawbacks to being such a having such a strong brand is sometimes that's what people know the brand for, and they don't understand the other areas. Like you're talking about, how W cutting edge from technology perspective, but if you ask people what it is, even people in tech, they go immediately to WrestleMania and what they see on TV, and they don't see that side of the business. So as you were learning about it, you thought, man, this is cool, cutting edge, and you got to do so much stuff. What were you most excited that they were doing that you got to do at that
Yeah, I mean, and the other thing that was exciting before I answer that was just the level of people that you're meeting at. You're
time?
meeting with, like like the CFO. You meet with the head of just the editorial. I mean, these are people, a heartbeat, away from, the CEO's office. So just the level of thoughtfulness, and investment within this position and within the group was impressive. Um, and then, but there were some big tech decisions that were going to be driven. One of them was just 2 years before I eventually joined. WWE had really taken their pay-per-view model to direct to consumer. So in that when that was with the launch of like WWE's OTT network, and back in February of 2014 when it was launched before I got there, there was Netflix, Hulu, and now WWE Network.
Hmm.
So it was definitely forward thinking. But there were discussions about how to continue to run that. Um, and tech decisions to be like made, and I'm like, wow, that's just huge. It's exciting. It's one of the largest P&Ls in like the whole entire company, and just to be right in the nucleus, right, right in the eye of that, was like awesome. Also, again, it was talking about growth and alignment. It was like a bigger group. It was like a bigger position. Ultimately, it led to me, years later, getting a few years later, getting promoted to SVP. So getting an SVP of a publicly traded company was a nice milestone, career milestone thing for anybody. So again, things were aligned, and hey, it's in Connecticut, so which is it eliminates more than half of that 2-hour commute. So, but no, there were some interesting tech decisions, and just talking about where to go with all of their consumer products and roadmaps, and all of their shop experiences was very intriguing.
It's so cool to hear, your story over your career, and really the things that excited you the most from a growth perspective is that intersection of like business and technology. It wasn't, just the tech. It was how it kind of tied into bigger business decisions. Like you're talking about, OTT, the network is like that's a technology problem, but it's also one of a huge P&L. So like you needed both of those things to really get you excited about taking on a new challenge and kind of growth and representing that.
I did, and I also like to kind of, I'm a technologist first and foremost, but yeah, I've got some, and I love building and innovating and delivering, but yeah, I love to do like passion projects. One of the things that was exciting that we started to like look at was some of the new retail technology with things like what AWS is doing with some of their pop-up stores and just walk out. Um, and there's a lot of stuff being done with virtualization, how you can run broadcast virtually. So it really was like a great, great place to, yeah, be a technologist and leader first and foremost, but also to, kind of have, try and add pure business value to because I always feel that if you have technologists and you're a technologist that knows, what your business stakeholders want and where your team can like fit in and deliver value, yeah, that's an important kind of a quality for like what makes me happy.
And was that shaped when you got closer to the business at Turner Broadcast when you were working directly alongside of them? That kind of like got that where it was like, wow, like this is technology and business intertwined. Like there is no buffer for me. Like I'm here, and that's what got you excited.
Yeah, yeah. Turner Broadcasting time, like Warner, was great. I was telling my wife, I said, in my first month there, I got invited down to like a meeting with some of the with like the GM at CNN Money that I was supporting, and we went to go meet with the like business development and the people that were responsible for the investment funds within the corporate entity, and we were looking to buy a company. And they brought me to like the table to say, hey, does this make sense to you from what they're saying? This was a startup and that kind of stuff. And they said, does this make sense? Does the technology make sense? Do the numbers they're talking about make sense? So that was present there too. And that was like month one of the job. And like, wow, this is great.
That's awesome. And you mentioned before, and I want to circle back to it because it's
Sure.
quick. The SVP title. Did you celebrate that one?
What did I do for that one? We keep coming back to this. I probably should have. No, that would no look. That was great. No, I probably went out to dinner or something. Maybe like probably went out to dinner and probably about it.
Peter, we got to work on your celebrations.
I
It's,
know, I know.
you talk about these big milestones, they're so meaningful. We got to work on that. Next time, make sure I'm your first call. I'll tell you, we'll brainstorm, we'll workshop how you can celebrate it.
I'm in. I'm in. I'm in. You got it.
Amazing, amazing. Well, listen, your story's phenomenal. I love the thread throughout about, you trusting your gut and feel, but also the ambition tied to growth and how you define growth. This can mean multiple things instead of it being so linear and so narrowly focused, which I think is super critical because every role you explored was growth, but in a different way. It wasn't always money or title or chasing this way. You had a very you had a framework based on a philosophy that what growth represented to you. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and I'll leave you with, I know we're wrapping up, but I'll leave you with like this also. It's like one of the things that I also, there are many things we could kind of come back for like a part two on, but one of the things that, I took me a while to, like learn probably, was probably well into my first like job and maybe even into my second one was, being comfortable within your own skin. Ultimately you are who like you are, and I think people can, you know people will sense if you're not being like genuine. And what I mean for that is, I always try to be a little more, probably arguably maybe a little more formal at work, especially early on in my like career, as opposed to just being, I would say, just being me, right? You don't have to put on a, I think you don't have to put on a different persona. I think you just have to be, yeah, obviously professional, but I think you just have to be yourself. And again, just be comfortable in just who you are and just where you are within life and, your like career. And I think that genuineness, was something that I, helped like me is, just especially as I, went from my first, kind of company and job onto my next. I think people will, respect you as like a partner if you have that genuine feeling about you.
I love that sentiment. I think that's great, and something that is hard for especially early on for people to do because you feel you have to act a certain way because you don't know how to act. And I think we need more leaders that are saying, just be yourself, just be genuine and authentic.
Trust.
That's how you act,
Yeah.
not fit this mold and say this and do that. It's just be you.
Yeah. Trust, right? You have to open up. You have to show that you're human, right? You have to respect everyone. But yeah, I think that that also builds trust, which is an important as you anywhere, but especially as you get more and more responsibility.
Yeah, trust is the ultimate currency in every relationship, especially professional ones. So, Peter, in terms of, I want to wrap up by asking you, people see you online, they see your LinkedIn profile or think they know your story, but what is one thing somebody coming across you and your profile that you would like them to know about you that they can't necessarily find on LinkedIn?
Yeah, wow. Thank you. So, well, even though I love technology. I am a fun guy. I do have that harmony, I do that life outside of work. So, if this technology thing doesn't work out, I may have one or two avenues. So I actually have two other, other than work, I actually have two other certifications. I'm actually a couple years back got my PADI professional or scuba diving certification. And when I was in high school and college, one of the I was also a professional ski instructor. To kind of as I was doing my racing thing in high school and college. So yeah. So I guess if the technology doesn't like work out, I can either go teach skiing or go teach scuba diving. Kind of can I do that? So I don't think that's on my LinkedIn profile. So yeah.
Thanks so much for watching. If you liked today's episode, please follow along and hear more great stories from us. Make sure to follow Spark Recruiting on YouTube and LinkedIn. We'll see you next time.